super excited to welcome you to our panel this morning. My name is Karina Montag and I'm with Inside Prison Project. And this panel is titled Locating in-Prison Programs Within the Context of Justice Reform. So I have just a small topic to talk about. And we at TPW are about coalition building. And so we've invited 4 folks from our community to represent different perspectives on the work that we're all doing. And to engage with one another around this work, to be able to have hard conversations, to be able to step into the contradictions and really explore those together as a group. So the context for our panel is that the work that we're all doing is complex, it can be challenging, and it can be complicated. So there's the issue of CDCR funding. We're straddling different systems, working with folks who are inside, working with survivors, working outside with volunteers. And some of us come to this work from a deeply personal place, that we're directly impacted, we're survivors, and some of us come to this work as service providers. So how do we sort of bridge that conversation? So for this panel, we've asked each panelist to speak from a particular identity, even though we understand that it's all multifaceted for many of us. So I will briefly introduce our panelists. At the end, we have Dolores Canales, who comes from Family Unity Network, as well as the talent director for the Bail Project and the co-founder of California Families to Abolish Solitary Confinement. Next to Dolores, we have Karen McDaniel, who is the founder and executive director of Place for Grace. We have Bori PJI, who is program manager at GRIP and the wellness coordinator for the Ahimsa Collective. And next to me is Keith Watley, who is the founder and executive director of Uncommon Law and an Obama Fellow. So, even though I just gave a really brief introduction, I would like for all of you to give a little introduction into who you are, what you do, and then within your identity, how do you position your work in the larger context of justice reform? Maybe we'll start with Dolores. Do you want to pass? You have about 5 minutes.
I was saying straight. So first of all, I just want to say thank you all very much for being here and you for having me. I know that I see this room, and what it shows me is a true humility and a collective power, because everybody sitting in this room has done such phenomenal work. And to be willing to sit and listen to panelists such as myself, that it's truly an honor. And so I think I boast about half of you in this room constantly, so I just want to say thank you very much. And I'm supposed to briefly introduce myself. Sorry. So my name is Dolores Canales, and I have a paid job that is Director of Talent Development with the Bail Project, but my heart is organizing with the families, with California Families Against Solitary Confinement and the Family Unity Network. And that is basically just organizing and symposiums and panels and family bus trips to the prison. So.
And Dolores, before you move on, so within your role as a service provider, even though you hold multiple, you come to this work with multiple identities, how do you position your work in the broader sphere of prison reform?
I believe through family reunification, the people inside, those that are still, in cemented steel cages, the more reunification with family, the stronger ability they have to have hope. Hope of a life outside. When I went into prison, I was taught, put away your pictures, don't think of your kids, don't think of your family, all that's going to hurt too much. This isn't real life, and just, just treat it like one big party. That's when I went into prison at 18. And so I did take that advice, and unfortunately I went to prison for over 20 years of my life. I have 5 prison terms. It was through recidivism, through a drug addiction. And, and I know lifers probably used to look at people like us and think if I only had that one chance. But unfortunately, there is a lot of people like me that continue to go in and out and in and out, just recycle through the system. And so for me, and for what I went through, and my family was always there. They used to visit me, but I believe that in showing the families what we do on the bus trips is we have, like an attorney will come with us to talk about the propositions and the laws. We take them to the beach to have a bonfire. We make it like a family retreat, so this way the family's connected and to those inside as well. And we make it like a whole weekend retreat for both sides. And they go in filled with so much hope of there's so many laws changing, there's so many ways you can come home now, there's so many things you could do, even suggesting the journaling together. And so I think that builds the family relationship and the ability to have hope while you're inside that things are changing and there's people advocating for you to know that you can come home too.
So I guess I echo what Dolores said in terms of the honor of being here, right? I was so moved by Nani yesterday. It was the first time I had ever been in the same space as him, and to hear him to hear Nani refer to our people inside as our relatives, right? Just profoundly moved me. And so I see all of you as relatives too, so it is definitely a great honor to be here. I'm Kara McDaniel, and I am from the Place for Grace, and we do programs in 14 prisons, all the way from the southern border up to Pelican Bay. And for us, that looks like unification of families, like Dolores was talking about. I came to the work originally very selfishly, as I have mentioned previously, to smaller groups, because I wanted to find a place for healing for my own children. Their father has been incarcerated their entire lives. They have been raised in prison. They've spent their birthdays and Christmases and New Year's and all of these significant life events and times in prison visiting rooms. And so I wanted to find healing for them, healing for Sutina's children that have grown up with mine, healing for all of the kids that have a parent inside. And so I started Place for Grace, and I quickly realized that that work of connecting families was just a small piece of a much larger movement, right? Like that the ultimate family unification is having our people home, having our dads home, having our moms home, our grandfathers, our uncles, our sisters and brothers. And so for me, that looks like helping heal our families so that they can help bring their loved ones home. Helping empower people to know that they have a voice, even the children that we work with, such that they are empowered to know that they can call the government. They can speak up on behalf of their father, their mother. So for me, I think that the larger context is the ultimate liberation of our people. That's what it's going into.
Good morning. I am Rory, PJI, mostly known as PJ. So I have a lot of layers of why I do this work, and mainly it's because I wanted to give back to my community, to really be accountable for the people harmed, and also to be accountable to the people who have supported me throughout the years, because I didn't get here by myself. I'm formerly incarcerated. I did a 22-year stretch, 20 years in state prison, and then after getting released from state prison, I was picked up by ICE, and so I went through the whole system for immigration, and really humbles me in a big way. But I have a lot of community support, and so I say that because the community showed up for me, in ways that I couldn't even imagine, and just me, but my families, the people who cared about me, and it was really, really touching to me. And I started this work because of 8 men who really saved my life. And I'll just share a little bit about why I say that, and how I got to that point. So both my families, both my parents were survivors of genocide, and they ran from Cambodia, where they were massing away millions of people. And so my whole entire family was butchered in the war. My mom escaped it, went to Thailand, and that's where I was born. And I came to the United States when I was 4.5 years old. And I was moved into a community that was really traumatized, who shared similar experience in the war, who lost family members. And in this community, with these traumas, and the trauma was passed on to the generation, or to the second generation. And so we grew up in all these traumas and all this hardship and difficulty, and you never really know how to deal with that, right? So I got involved in gangs younger, and then which led to my crime. And I was convicted of second-degree murders while committing a robbery. And when I went to prison in 2004, I sat in a room with like 8 men doing this work, restorative justice work. And they shared like openly about their life experience, about their traumas, how they grew up. And these guys who've been in prison for decades, like over 30 years. And I was listening to these guys being really transparent, like really modeling, the work. And my facilitator shared how he lost 2 daughters to crime. And at that moment, we're looking at his pain, because he was reliving the moment. I realized I've done the same thing to another family. So I made a commitment for myself at that moment, because I was so ashamed of my action. I decided, with this moment on, that no one else should have to go through this. So I changed my life. I started really getting involved in the work and trying to help other people understand their life story, understand their trauma, healing from the trauma, and really showing up for the community, right, in a big way. And so I felt like my life was saved at that moment. Like I could have kept going, spiral out of control into the prison system and really get lost in it. But those 8 men saved my life. They made me realize that I am part of the community, and the community needs me, and the youth needs me. So I got involved in that. And so right now I work at the Training Institute. As a project manager, I do stuff with the Hidden Collective as well as educators, and also I work with the Asian prison support communities. And we do a lot of reentries, helping them transition to society. We also do stuff with immigration reforms, try to keep families together, and policies, do a lot of other things. And one of my passions today, so I do a lot of traveling, and hopefully I might do less of it. But so I do a lot of public speaking, and I go and talk to universities, students, and anyone who's willing to listen. Just like try to help them understand about their role in the community, how they can help out the community, and how, as a community, all of us need to take action in order to change the community, because if we don't do nothing, it's not going to work. Right? So, thank you.
You need to be more active, PJ. You don't have enough to do. I'm Keith Watley, and I work at Uncommon Law, and we're a nonprofit not too far from here in Oakland. We provide counseling and legal assistance to people serving life sentences. Most of our work is helping them identify the experiences they had in childhood and adolescence that contributed to them ending up in prison. Like more specifically, it's helping them understand how they made the decisions about who they were going to be in life, how they were going to be, how they were going to interact with their community, the people around them, their families, the broader community. And then, I always say that I'm much more of a counselor than a lawyer, because that work takes a long time. And we have as many social workers on our team as we do lawyers and students. And over the course of several months or years, sometimes we get them ready to appear before the parole board. California has 35,000 people serving life sentences. And we try to reach as many of those as we can to get through this process. And when it works out, it's great. When it doesn't, it's very frustrating, of course. We've had a fair amount of success, and it's great to see what people are able to do when they get out. And so I had my first parole hearing with a client 18 years ago. And in that time, the work we do or the way we do it hasn't really changed. The counseling part It's been a significant part of it. What has changed, though, is that it matters now. That the parole board cares now to hear that someone's been doing the work to change their lives while they've been in prison. And it is so powerful to see so many partners in the institutions that you all represent and work with to be doing the work that now matters to the parole board. But to be clear, we're not doing it for the parole board. It actually doesn't work that way. Anybody who tells it differently is lying to you. But along the way of your own transformation and change, the parole board is going to recognize, yeah, this is somebody who's ready to go. And so, I think about the counseling part, especially when you see what people are able to do when they learn about themselves, figure themselves out. Then you have people like PJ who come out, and so many other people in this room. I see Nate Williams hiding over here in the corner. One of my clients who did the work, started work inside, changed his life inside, contributed inside, and is doing that once he gets out. But I think that when you think about counseling for people in prison as a social movement that continues when they come out, like that's what this is. And I'm proud to be a part of that. And we need to be aware this is different. We're changing the direction of the prison system and eventually eliminating it altogether, I think.
So as we're holding all of our multiple identities, we are thinking and we're talking about all of the people and systems to whom we are accountable, whether it is to those who are currently incarcerated, to the families we are and with whom we work, to the folks who are now home. The question of ability comes up over and over and over again. So I'd like to ask all of you, to whom are you accountable personally, and to whom is your organization accountable?
Well, I'd like to say for myself, and this is for myself, not to disrespect anyone, but I feel my accountability before anything comes to God. It comes to how are my actions, what are the thoughts of my heart when nobody else is watching, because it's not always too good. And just, coming in that place. But then I do have a job, and I love my job. So I am accountable to my employer as Director of Talent Development with the Bail Project, that I do work for a phenomenal organization that allows me to do my family organizing on a national level to eliminate the solitary confinement. But then ultimately, I feel I'm accountable to the family members and to those inside. The way that I interact with the family members, the way that I treat the family members, in which it's not always easy. When you have a whole lot of calls and sometimes people are asking questions, and I even explain sometimes. I'm multitasking right now, so if my voice sounds a little irritated, I apologize. Because at the end of the day, how would I want somebody to treat my Nina has passed away, but she raised me because my father was in prison and my mom took off. And so my aunt and uncle couldn't have any children, and she went on to raise me and went through heartbreak with my own incarceration, and then I have a son that is a lifer in prison. But I think of her torment. I think of her, she used to pray rosaries and light candles and do all this stuff, just having faith that someday things were going to get better. And I see her suffering, and I see her torment, but above all, to this day, I feel her love. And so I think of that, and that's why I'm accountable to, is those families that I would want to treat them exactly as I would want somebody to treat my very own Nina, and that those inside know if they're referring their family member to me, their family member is going to be loved in abundance. I think that broke. I thought we were going to start with Keith, so I'm a little thrown off, but
So I thought a lot about this accountability question. I love all the questions, by the way.
Yes.
You're wrong. And I think that Like, first and foremost, I'm accountable to every single child that has a parent inside. Like, I'm so cognizant of that every single day, that the programs that we build, the work that we do inside, the relationships that we maintain are just so important for every single kid. I think that when a child's parent goes to prison, it's the unspoken. No one wants to address it. No one wants to talk about it. No one wants to admit it. No one wants to face it. Certainly the children don't want to talk about it. They don't want to tell their friends. They don't want to tell their teachers. They're shamed and pushed to the margins. Like, no one brings a lasagna when your dad goes to prison. But if he dies, right, they're going to bring a lasagna and chicken and soup, and they're going to do a car wash and have a scholarship fund. But when your parent goes to prison, quite the opposite happens. So first and foremost, my accountability is to every child, and my accountability is to every person inside. And then I think that I'm also accountable to all of you, right? I'm accountable to Dolores. Dolores came before me. I'm accountable to her in how I operate in this space. I am obliged to treat families with the same dignity and respect that Dolores does, because I'm accountable to her. I'm accountable to Nate Williams, who came home after a life sentence, right? Like, the work that we do makes us accountable to each other, to the people that we serve. And then I think lastly, what I'm really realizing recently is that I'm accountable to me, right? And that I am a part of that equation, that I have to hold myself accountable as well.
Can I just refer to Karen?
What she said.
What she said. Well, so I shared a little bit about on the last answer to the first question. Today I'm very mindful of the people I harm. And so that accountability for me is a big thing. And it's funny because that question came up, because a while back I was in NBC and I was doing a class when one of the participants asked me, what does accountability look like? Now that I'm accountable, right? It really challenged me. I sat there and thought about it, what is accountability? What does it look like? Is this a word we're talking about, or is this something that we can see, right? And so I really thought about that, and I actually created a curriculum just on that and did a whole workshop on it. And what I realized is accountability, for me, it wasn't just a word, it wasn't just a thought or a concept, but it's a philosophy where you live it. Every single day you live it, right? And living it means acknowledging the harm it's caused, able to understand where that comes from, able to help break the cycle of harm in your community, giving back, right? So I broke accountability into 4 stages, right? One is acknowledging harm, know who you harm, how you harm them. And then learning to have remorse, right? And that comes from understanding empathies and being empathetic to your community, to people around you, and giving back to the community, making amends. And then breaking the cycle, making sure that don't happen again. And so I did this workshop with the participant I work with, but really in the concept of everything, I want to be able to live my life in a way that would help other people understand where they come from and what they need to do for the community. And I got involved in a lot of work in program development simply because I care about my brothers and sisters inside. I want them to understand it for themselves and how that they can utilize this experience, right, and the knowledge to get out of prison, to come back to their families, and how do they show themselves accountable to the people they love and care about. I believe healing is in the center of all of this. Healing yourself, healing your communities, really showing up, authentically and then honestly in your capacity as a human being. Right? And really remember you are a human being. Sometimes people tend to forget that. And so, I was going to say for me, really humanizing me as a person, but also humanizing my community, right? And remembering that we all connected.
So I'm definitely accountable in a lot of different ways, in different people, groups of people. I think about being accountable to the families who have given everything they had and then some in support of their loved ones in prison and doing whatever they could to bring them home. I was at a prison yesterday where a client was being released, and there was another family that was coming to pick up their loved one. And I first noticed it because the driver almost hit my car when she came. And I've had 2 accidents in the last year, so I'm very sensitive to this. But in the car, there was a woman bringing her mother to pick up the man who's been released. And she said, I've been holding on for him to come home. She said, I just made 90 years old. I need him home. We've been waiting for this day for a long time. He has been in prison for 32 years. So I'm accountable to her. And people like that who've done all they can, as long as they can, for people to come home. And I'm accountable to the people that we work with on the inside who are willing to share their most difficult, challenging, painful experiences and emotions and fears with me and the people on my team. Because they have to trust that we'll do something with that, do the right thing with that. We'll take care of that. And if we don't, we fail. We fail them, we fail their families, all that. So I'm accountable to them. And also, this is something that's kind of been an evolving concept for me. As the executive director, I have a lot of people who work with us and volunteer with us. But they don't work for me, I work for them. Like these are folks who recognize these are people that I want to work with to bring home. They're dedicating their time. Some are being paid, a whole lot more are not. Too many are not. So my job is to help them do theirs. Is to help them be effective, get access to what they need, tools they need, the support they need to be effective in what they want to do. So multiple levels for me.
So another thread that's coming through in this last round and in all of our work is that we are really stewarding trauma. Whether that's with the folks we work with inside, whether that's what it is to come home, whether it's being a family member, whether it's holding survivors or being a survivor. And I'm curious to know, how is the challenge around trauma showing up in your work, both for you and for those you serve, for those who are still behind the wall or those who might be on this side of the wall?
So then I hear their answers, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that is such a good answer. Yeah, me too. But the trauma, I often say my heart is serving life without the possibility of parole. And I didn't even realize it until July 2011, and I became a full-on organizer with the hunger strikes and everything. And I realized how it's a struggle to allow myself to be free. As a matter of fact, as we were writing, Kenneth Hartman, who served 38 years, we were talking, and I said, how are you doing? And he said he was okay, doing good and things. And I said, but you were free before you even came out. You just needed your body to catch up with you. And sometimes I feel like I don't allow myself to be free. Sometimes I think of when I was in prison, how I always wanted to be out. I spent 20 years of my life always wanting to be out of prison, but then now I'm spending the other half of my life always wishing I wasn't, but not literally in the sense, but when I am in prison with my people, and that's how I say it, with my people, I feel free, I feel liberated, I feel so loved and alive, because I want everyone home, whether it's a man's prison or a woman's prison. And so I struggle with that, and I work on self-healing to not feel guilt that I'm home, but to know that everything I do is going to bring them home, and working in that. And then also with those that have lost a loved one to crime, because I look at my grandbabies and I think realistically, if somebody hurt them, how would I feel? Would I have a revengeful heart? Would I have a bitter heart? It's easy for me to say, forgive somebody and let them come home because they've changed. But coming to a level and empathizing and know that I would give my very own life to protect my grandbabies as well. So I deal with trauma, obviously, on a lot of different levels. So it's a constant, it's being around and embraced by people like Karen, by people like Hamdia, people that have been doing this and that are doing this now and that are doing this from a place of just healing and love and allowing myself to be loved in this work.
So specifically, how is trauma showing up?
For you, I think those just...
Right, so let's talk about the people that we work with instead of me right now. Okay, Sam? Okay. Yeah, so trauma is at the core of everything that we all do, right? I think that I want to challenge you all today to look at trauma a little bit differently, or maybe to allow each other's trauma. When Sutina and I go into prisons, one of the things that we speak to the men and women that we work with right away is my story is my story, and your story is your story. Straight up. Yours is no more valuable than mine, no less. Your LWOP is no more serious than his 10 years. You're all away from your families, right? And so I think what I'm learning is that not only are the kids traumatized, not only are our people inside traumatized, the brothers, the sisters, the wives that are home waiting, not only are communities traumatized, but I'm going to push back here and I'm going to ask those of us who are doing the work inside to realize that the officers that we work with are traumatized too. And that is no less valuable than the trauma that we carry. CDCR has the highest rate of suicide of any officers, right, across the country. And it's really easy to see it as us against them. And I really came into this space as us against them. I wanted to fight every officer I ever saw, right? I was Sutina knows I have a finger and I would put it in somebody's face constantly. I don't care if you're a warden, the inspector general, I don't care, right? And I came to realize that all the trauma that I was carrying and it was manifesting, they carry too, and it just plays out differently, right? It plays out for them by treating our loved ones like animals or non-humans. For us, it looks like addiction in different forms, alcohol or whatever we're addicted to, right? Anger. To food, to anger and food. So Dolores and I get together and talk shit about people and eat cookies. It comes out in all these ways. It comes out in elevators, right? When you least expect it. And you're like, what the hell? I'm just trying to show people space, and now I'm locked in this elevator. And not only in the elevator, but we're locked in the elevator. The irony of this is because we're going down to show formerly incarcerated people the vault, which was really the cell, which is a trigger. And keys are a trigger. And, right? And having chits is a trigger. Like, the first time I got a green card that allows me unfettered access into every freaking prison in the state, shh. Don't call headquarters. Don't do that. But the first time I got that, and I got the chits that allowed me to check out keys and an alarm, that's traumatizing. Because where is the line between now, what am I, a freaking officer? I'm jingling keys, right? That's traumatizing. It's traumatizing every time we leave a prison and our people don't come with us. That is traumatizing. And it's what we don't talk about. It's why I think it's so powerful that we're all here, because we're carrying this trauma that we don't speak, and yet we can all help each other with it by eating cookies.
So I guess like trauma, I grew up in there, so like it's a lot there for me. I think one of the things that really stuck out for me, on a personal note, just lately, I was really noticing it. You know, I live in San Francisco, so I walk down Mission Street and Market a lot. And I remember hearing sirens, right? When they have like fire truck sirens, when it comes by, and like my immediate instinct is to kneel down. And then people around me looking at me all weird, and then I just realized I knelt down. I actually knelt down because of the siren. I'm like, man, I thought I shook that off. You know, I'm like, I'm out. I'm a free person. Like, why am I still like responding that way, right? Or reacting to the situation that way? Because I realized I carry a lot of that stuff with me and not really noticing it. So every day I try to work through it. I was walking down to actually go get a pizza with my friend who I haven't seen in a long time. And we were just walking down the street, and a bunch of people just started running, right? And I heard footsteps. And you know, in prison, you hear a footstep coming your way, like that someone's attacking you. So I'm like, immediately, like, my heart sank, and then I just like turned around, reflected really fast, and then like I realized a bunch of kids playing, like, they're laughing and having fun. I'm like, oh my goodness, did that really just respond that way or reacted that way? It's crazy, right? It's just funny how like, it's strange and heartbreaking that the trauma can carry and affects you in the ways you don't like understanding. I went to juvenile hall, worked with some kids in Martina juvenile hall, and I was given an ID to walk in there, and I was talking to these kids, and then I was done, and then I'm looking for direction, like, where do I go from here? And all the officers, like, they were looking at me all weird, like, you can hang out if you want to. Like, that was their answer, like, am I supposed to go somewhere right now? I said, no, you can leave it if you want. I'm like, are you serious? Like, I just walk anywhere I want? I said, yeah, you're free, like, you can do whatever you want. So I'm walking, you know, through these gates for the first time, like, I know escorts, and people just popping doors for me. And like, I was very emotional. Like, wow. And I forgot what it means to be human. Like, you don't get treated that way. I'm looking for someone to tell me what to do. Like, I can't. Like, I need to be escorted out of this facility, right? But in actuality, I can just walk out of here. Yeah, it's like really, really strange how that works. So I'm still like trying to understand it and cope it, because like in this work, and I'm one of the thing about accountability. Like, I love my brothers and sisters, so when they call me anytime, I pick up the phone. Like, I allocate a piece of my funding from my paycheck to make sure that I can like, pick up their phone calls. So like to talk about this, right? Talk about some of their struggle, what they're struggling with, trying to get out. And I would share with them about these experiences. They're like, you know, I mean, it's a learning moment, but you know, it's a really, really surreal process. So trauma is a continuation, and you just work on it and be more aware of it and conscious of it. Standing in line and DOB is a nightmare, by the way. They're traumatizing, so I thought it was worse than the catching line. Wow. Yeah, so can't see my kid like don't trigger you like that was a But yeah, I'm still learning about this trauma thing. I think working with people with trauma in different capacity, I think as a incarcerated person, a former incarcerated person, I'm learning to adapt to society, but I also know that this kind of work, there's all kinds of trauma we work with. So I was a youth counselor for 12 years, and I work with trauma victims, domestic violence, rape counseling, and I came to see how this stuff like really, really affects your life, and then learning how that could be transferred, trauma transfers back and forth. It's just all. I'm like constantly reminded that like our community is really, really devastated by their experience right now, by crime, by just separation of families. Reminding me like why I do this work, why it's important, right? Yeah. So, ask me next question. Thank you.
So the work that I do, that we do, is it's like a parole hearing. On average, they last between 3 and 5 hours. So I go through a series of 3 to 5 hour long immersions in the worst thing people have ever experienced and the worst thing they've ever done. Both of those things are covered. And in that hearing, I mean, the space is very small, very tight. The room's as big as this table, as long as this table almost. And around the table, you have the parole commissioners. I'm sitting there with my client. You have the district attorney's representative is there, family members of the person who was harmed in the crime. If it was not a murder case, oftentimes the actual victim of the crime was present too. And for the next 3 or 5 hours, we're going to talk about the worst thing that any of these people have ever experienced. It's not good for anybody. Not a whole lot of healing happens in the parole hearing. A whole lot of additional harm, a whole lot of trauma. So I actually don't know how many hundreds of times I've done that. Hundreds of times. And in addition to the hearing itself, thousands of hours breaking down why it happened and the details of what happened, everyone who was impacted by it. It takes a toll, for sure. Especially when you've been doing it for a while. But the other thing is, I talked about the trust and the relationship between me and my client, that they have to be willing to share those things with me. But I'm coming in, I'm asking them to peel back decades of scar tissue, to revisit those worst things they've ever experienced and the worst things they've done. And then after I meet with them for a couple hours, I'm leaving. And they're going back to the cell. Without the kind of programs you all are providing, those folks will be in a lot worse shape. There aren't enough of those kind of programs. There's not enough space for people to process and continue to deal with those things that come up through this parole consideration process. And so the trauma is like every side of it. There's not a whole lot of restorative justice that gets talked about in parole hearings in this process. There should be, but it's not designed for that. It's not good for anybody. And Karen talked about the trauma and the experiences of correctional staff. It's certainly true among parole commissioners too. Unfortunately, too often people become, jaded. They pretty quickly decide what they're going to do with the case, so that they don't have to hear all the rest of it. Well, I looked at this piece of paper. I know that you got a 115 last year. I'm done with this. We're going to sit here for 3 more hours, but I'm already decided what I'm going to do. The people find a way to manage, and that deprives that individual of their individual consideration. But it's their way of coping with the trauma, I suspect. We all have to come up with our own. But again, more programs inside means people have the space to process those things. So I'm grateful for the company.
I am feeling really moved by everyone's responses, and also realizing that we, as well as holding multiple identities, that we come to this work with a different end game or goal. Right? Some of us identify as abolitionists. Some of us are here for prison reform. And another question that's coming up for me is, what does safety mean? What does safety look like? And I don't mean safety like, are we safe emotionally? I mean, what does community safety look like as we're contemplating our work and what we're doing? And I believe that personal wellness is integral to achieving safety. And so I'm curious, what keeps you in this work as we talk about the challenges and the struggles, and regardless of our route, we have a long road to get to where we want to be. What keeps you in this work?
I think sometimes what is everybody laughing at? environments at a very young age, we're taught that if you're in prison, you're cool and you're a role model because you get the good Nike tennis shoes while, you know, the other one out here is wearing Payless tennis shoes. And if you were brought up this way, then you could understand it. Or you graduate and you maybe get some balloons, but then somebody comes out of prison and you throw a block party. And then we're taught oftentimes like, oh, that's gangster, that's down. And I used to have this kind of mindset, you know, a good convict, all this kind of stuff. And what I've seen since I have now 17 years sobriety is what is gangster, what is down, is people that go to school, then they, after they graduate from that, then they go to college, and then they work. Like the commitment, you know, that, I mean, that's like gangster, really, when you think about it. That's like hardcore, you know? And so I tell my girls, I tell my people, I'm like, we got life so twisted. Everybody that's, you know, so what keeps me in this is I see the youth, and I see their role models, and I see what are their goals, and what are they looking up to, and are they feeling that they have to steal the Nike tennis shoes, because I was raised by my aunt and uncle and had everything I wanted, and at 13 my mom took me away into a life of poverty. So I knew right away I had to steal my clothes, I had to steal my toothpaste, I had to steal to survive because nobody was telling me, you know, just get your education, get a job. Nobody was telling me that the real way, the real life way. What keeps me in this work is I see the kids and I see how they look up to their parents in prison and how much they love them. And that, so when you talk to the ones inside, when you know, you see the fighting and you see the stuff that goes on in prison, and it's, you know, just explaining that there's so much more to life, that there's so much more for them. And I just want to close with a real quick story and what keeps me in this work. So there was a mom, Miss Marion Hawkins, and she was 75 years old. Her son was in his 50s. She hadn't seen him in 15 years. And she called me. She's like, Miss Dolores, my son said, you know, you would help me get there and I could trust you. And I said, well, you know, I don't think we're doing another bus trip this year, Miss Hawkins. I don't have any money. I said, but, you know, if we get something, I'll keep you on the list. And her voice just stayed with me. I called Dorsey Nunn on a Sunday morning. He didn't answer, so I left him a voicemail. And I said, you know, Dorsey, I got this call from this mom, and it's just nagging at me. I said, and I think you should lend me $5,000. This is in a voicemail. I think you should lend me $5,000, Dorsey. I said, but kind of you should probably just give it to me because I can't pay it back. And then I said, so just call me and let me know what you're thinking. So I hang up. I don't hear from Dorsey for like 2 weeks, and I said, wow, okay, maybe I was wrong. I get a call, 5:30 in the morning. If anybody knows Dorsey Nunn, 5:30 in the morning. Dolores, I know it's early there, Dolores, but I've been thinking. I got your message. And I'm going to give you that money, Dolores. You know, and it's things like that. It's things like that that keep me in this work, knowing that there's so many people that believe in this work and that are willing to do anything, and that we all have different roles. Some are over here doing this and getting this attention over here, and some are over here on their Instagram, like, you know, look at me, and but we all have different roles. And Dorsey didn't put it on Facebook, you know, Dolores gave it, you know, but we all have different roles, and some people, you don't even know the amazing stuff that people are doing. Scott Bennett has flown in on a weekend, because, you know, I said, I need you to come talk to the families. He says, well, you know, about what? I said, well, because they love you, and it's going to lift up their morale. You know, it's the roles that people never even hear about, and doing this work and doing it with a whole heart commitment. And that's, you know, so much more. That's it. I'm sorry, I went over, I think, 1 minute.
I'm reclaiming my time. I want my time back to work. What keeps me in this work is our people coming home. Like, literally, I spoke this yesterday to a small group, is that I now can physically touch, talk to, share with people outside here that we've known inside. And they're coming home in droves, more and more and more. And that absolutely keeps me going. To be able to see all these programs. When we started this work, we started at Calipatria, a level 4 down in Imperial Valley. Hot. It's hot in Calipatria, if you've ever been there. It's hot. Nobody goes out there. No one's going there to say, oh, I'd like to do a program at Calipatria for no money. When I started this work, Sutina and I started this work with no money. No money. I sold burritos at the truck stop in Calipatria to the truck drivers at 4:30 in the morning. to fund these programs. And now we hit yards and we got to fight for space. They're like, I'm sorry, they're doing yoga in the chapel. What the hell, yoga? And the dogs are over the gym right now. Good fight. This is a fight I'll take. You want to fight over space? Let's fight over space. Let's do that. I'm an abolitionist at heart, and so it's like right? So it's really hard to navigate that space because I want to tear down the walls and blow the whole freaking thing up. But until all of our people are home, like we have to be in there helping them get the skills, the access that they need. And really sometimes it's not only the skills, it's just the access. Like they have what they need, they just need to get before the board or what have you. So I think that's what's keeping me in, is just our actual people coming home in real time and through all these different mediums, right? Like we literally just came out of a legislative cycle with incredible wins. Do you all understand the felony murder rule is no longer? Like, I don't know if Phil is here today. Rebecca, is Phil here? So, like, Phil is here, right? He's here because of youth offender parole in 261. Our people are coming home because of the work that all of us are doing. Not only in the programs that we run, but when we show up at the Capitol. When we make signs for our loved ones and say we want to bring this person home and this person. So that's what's keeping me in the movement, is the reality that together we can strike like a mighty, mighty blow, right? Individually, we can all make this much difference, but together, it's incredible the power that we have.
Thank you. And that's why I do this work, because y'all did that for me. Like, I'm out here because the community advocacy work, and everyone showing up with that sign. I came home, on a PJ Home, Bring PJ Home campaign from ICE. Now there's another campaign called Keep PJ Home campaign. And so, like, I understand it very well. Mike, Phil, and I, we were part of the Kit Kat program in San Quentin. And we were able to, like, really get involved in SB 260, 261, SB 9, and how to shape it and get it passed. And then, like, that was a group effort, right? So I feel like I owe a lot to my community in a lot of different ways. And so even though in this work, sometimes I feel tired, I feel burnt out, I don't want to get up from bed or sleep for 2 weeks. Like, I feel it, like I feel all in my bone. Like, like when I go to juvenile hall, I remember like this kid, like he came and hugged me after a workshop and he was crying. He was like, man, I'm doing a life sentence. Like they gave him 35 to life. No one in the department got 35 to life. And he told me I was afraid, like he was contemplating suicide. But it touched me in a big way because, like, I made it home, and I was sharing how other people made it home as a lifer. Okay, it gave me hope. So I feel like moments like that, like, that's why I do the work. There's light bulb moments in the guys in class when they see, like they get it, like, they get it that moment, you see in their face, like, I got this, I woke up, I felt, okay, that's why I do this work, no matter how hard it is, how tired I am, it's like, people get it from me, it's beauty and, and healing. And so, yeah, I think, we go on for another 2 hours talking about this, but I feel like that's where my work is at, and that's what most reminded me is why I do this work.
Thank you. It's been an honor to be on the panel with these powerhouses, really. And you know, Dolores, you're responsible for so many people coming home, getting out of the shoe, going home. Thank you for that. But it's definitely, for me, it's, you know, people coming home. I used to not actually know how many folks we worked with who succeeded and come home from a life sentence. We finally started counting it up, and we're at, I think next week we'll be at 200. But that's powerful, but we still have 35,000. And we can't reach all of them. But because I see what's possible in the people coming home, you know, that's what keeps me going. And you know, one example, and it's the individual stories too of people that I've worked with. You know, I could tell you the story of each one of those 200 and what it took, what they had to go through, how they had to break themselves up and make the changes to get themselves home. The guy I was picking up yesterday, his name's Antoine, did 27 years. Been working with him for about 3 or 4 years. And when we first met, you know, the conversation was, he said, look, I know how to do prison. I don't know how to get home. I heard you know how to do that, how to make that happen. and I trust you. And I said, he was very clear. I said, look, you know, we've had a number of my clients go home, but I've never gotten anybody out of prison. You're going to get yourself out. I can show you how to do it, show you the resource you need to reach out to, but you got to do the work. And he's like, I'm down. And the other thing, he reminded me of this yesterday. He said, you know, we had a hearing coming up when we first met. It was in a few months back then. And he said, you told me, you know, when we met, that I was going to be denied at the upcoming hearing. And sure enough, I was. He was, not 5 years. But you also told me what I needed to do to get back earlier and to have better chances to see the next time. And so what I saw in him was somebody who all of a sudden had hope that he could go home, that he had a partner he could work with and travel in his path. And he now had, because of you folks and all of your work, he now had support in the institution, a place to go to process this stuff. He said, you know what, I started crying in groups. I never would have done it. First, I never would have gone to a group before. And even if I wanted to, they didn't exist. Now they exist. I go, I'm crying, I'm really emotional. And and he changed. So by the time we went to this most recent parole hearing, it was clear he'd done what he needed to do. The parole board was going to see it or not, I don't know. I don't control that part. But I was confident he'd done the work that he needed to do. But the thing that strikes me so much about his journey is because going from the person he was in prison, and even his life before prison, to somebody who could break himself down and be really emotional, be vulnerable in prison, in these group settings. It showed what's possible for other people. Because him doing that gave other people the space to do it. It gave them the freedom to say, well, if he could, I knew who he was. Because I know who he was, I know how significant this is that he's where he is right now, and he's made these changes. That means there's hope for me. And so because I know now that he's out, he's going to go back in, just like PJ does, just like Nate does, just like Phil does, you know, just like Leonard does, just like John. Like this is who they are. Because this is the generation of people coming out of prison that's going to transform that system. That's going to transform these communities. So that's what he's doing.
And I also want to just take a moment and lift up the weight of the people of whom we're speaking. And I am seeing some emotion coming up around the room, and just want to really acknowledge that and acknowledge the hundreds and hundreds of years that people have given of their lives, of their families, of their children, of their parents, of their grandparents to this system. So we're going to transition now into some Q&A. And just a reminder that a question ends with a question mark. A lot of collective stories and wisdom in the room, but this is really an opportunity to ask something of our esteemed panel.
There's a lot of insight in this room.
There's a lot of wisdom, a lot of insight. And so whether you want to just ask a general question of the panel or whether you want to direct it to someone specifically, feel free to state that as well. And I'm not sure whether we can just use this one mic. I don't know whether the other one is working, but I think I will grow. And I see Nate is here.
This is for PJ. When you were speaking about the youngsters in juvenile hall, that touched me because when I was in prison, I was a gang leader, and I remember somebody came to me and said, "I'm not a real gangster." And I didn't know what to do with that, right? I didn't do nothing about it. He went back to his cell, he hung himself, And I feel his spirit is still in there, and it always bothered me that because I didn't do nothing about it. Is that youngster that you talk about, are you still in contact with him?
I'm actually going to be going back regularly to juvenile hall. He hasn't reached out to me and gave me contact, so I'm hoping he reach out to me. But at some point, I want to go back to juvenile hall regularly to actually do some work with him. So one of my goals, this is my passion, right? It's being transparent. One of my goals in the long run, in the future, is what I see myself doing. I have this aspiration to create more programs in juvenile justice, potentially throughout California, and then create a reentry process for them. So I always picture myself able to do that, and then hopefully someday I can do that. So for me, it's step by step. Like right now, I'm on the monitor, ICE, so like ICE is really tracking me everywhere I go. That's why I pursue this governor's pardon, and if I'm able to get the governor's pardon, which hopefully is December, before I'm in office, like I won't be on the road anymore. The ankle monitor goes off, virtually a few months after that, I have to file my report. And then I can actually have more mobility. I can just go to juvenile hall, I can go down south to meet with the folks that I work with and do collaboration with. Just make things so much easier, right? But on the short term, like I want to have my own ground party to actually go a bit more regularly. And I'm already communicating with the people who is running it. And they're very open to me going back to visit and do work with the kids. But I want to actually create a program. It's just not going in there just to visit and talk to them, bringing more people in and talk to the kids. But I want to create a curriculum program where I work with the kids, like do something around some of their emotional, some of their traumas and their experience. And for kids like who always go to prison with 35 to life, 40 to life, I want to prep them. I want to prep them to make sure they don't get involved in gangs and politics when they hit the prison yard. I want them to focus on rehabilitation and programming, and come home. Right, come home. We have this little program we call CPOP does it, where we do correspondence, like there's college students do correspondence, right, with inmates in the population. I want to do something like that for kids. That if you go to the prison, I want to make sure you can reach out to somebody and they can continue to write to you and support you. So we keep track of where you're at. If you're going, we need resources we can provide you with and do that. So those are my vision, right? It's something I want to continue to do. And kids is my passion. That's why I got involved in Kid Kat. That's why I got involved in Squires when I was in St. Louis. Simply because no one was there for me when I grew up. I didn't have any mentor. I didn't have any direction. So I felt like now I'm in a capacity to have a better understanding and some more resources. Like I can do that for the youth, right? Just, for my community. Yeah.
Talk loud.
This is kind of a big question, might be a little funky. You mentioned end game, and I ponder a lot the end game of all of this work, and that a lot of this work feels downstream, and that there's this kind of paradox in this work of wanting to get better and better at this work, more impactful, more efficient, better funded, but at the same time wishing that there wasn't the need for this work, because we can manifest a system in our society where when people do the worst thing that they do in their life, that their community can rally around and keep them a part of the community instead of exiling them. And so I always wonder how we can move the wisdom that comes downstream to people who are working in the consequences of the trauma and the pain and the crime, how that wisdom can move upstream to affect the beginning of this whole cycle of trauma and pain and incarceration. It's a big question, but really endgame, I feel like you've got to keep an eye on the endgame, really, at all times, particularly as a collective. How can this wisdom of all of us move upstream in society and in the systems?
So I think that's a great question and very complex, no doubt. I think that we're doing it right here. We have brought new people, we've been very intentional about who was brought into this space. It's no accident that this space is heavily weighted to people who are formerly incarcerated or who have a loved one inside. And that's how we get that information, that wisdom, that knowledge to our people, by not leaving our people behind, by going back in, right? I was sitting here, my mind was just going a million places, just hearing PJ and listening to Nate and thinking about what they can do together and the partnership that they can build and going into juvenile halls, right? I think that as we sit here today and we make huge wins, young people are still being sentenced to 30 years. Our young people are still getting life sentences, right? And although we have youth offender parole, we don't want them to look at 15, 20, or 25 before they even have a possibility of hitting a parole board, right? So I think that that's a really important question. How can we saddle, corral this knowledge and get it to the young people so that they don't end up inside, so that we don't see them in our programs? I think that is very valuable, and I think that we have to tap into every single person here and stop. It's like a hole in the bucket, right? We have to stop losing this collective knowledge. And how do we do that? One, we have to pay our people that have come home. We have to value our people who have come home. Their stories are not free. Do you understand that? They are not here to uplift your programs. They are not here to just share their story because it's really, really sad and messed up, and it hooks people. They're here to share their wisdom, their hundreds and hundreds of years of collective wisdom, and we have to demand that they are paid for that they are uplifted, that they are honored for what they're bringing.
We have time for one more question, so I see you.
Not only are they here to uplift them, you guys are here to take over, because you know what? What we need is all of you who have that experience of being inside. All of us have been waiting for you to come home and take over. Yes. You guys need to take over. You have been so much more powerful, and I'm tired. So I want somebody to take over. I'm going to keep doing it, but I'm tired, you know? We love y'all.